vision or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Karen, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Sunday, June 21st, 2026 issue of the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, our first article is titled, "What Makes the U.S. So Special?" It has nothing to do with exclusion. President Trump is proud of America, and he wants you to be proud too. He chides the head of the Smithsonian Institution for his 250th anniversary exhibits because they don't say we're special enough, and he issues a directive to celebrate American exceptionalism. 50 years ago, when my father, Daniel Burstein, was Librarian of Congress during our nation's 200th anniversary, he was derided for saying we were too special. His best-selling 3-volume epic, The Americans, won the Pulitzer Prize. He appeared on television and in Esquire, Time, Reader's Digest, and Women's World, wrote children's history and school texts, and counseled our leaders. But the naysayers called him the 4th of July fireworks historian. Trump's kind of guy, you'd think. Quite the opposite. The problem for Trump is that when he sees our great weakness is exactly what my father said makes us special. Trump sees us as a model for the world. Daniel said that nothing could be more un-American than to urge other countries to imitate America, because they can't. What makes the United States special is how we were formed by the infusion of a people eager to find common ground. In Western Europe, with insignificant expectations, Daniel writes, men found themselves wherever they were in the 19th century because they were born there. The active choice of consciously choosing their particular community had been made, if ever, only by remote ancestors, the contemporaries of Beowulf, William the Conqueror, Siegfried, or Aeneas. On the other hand, because we were an immigrant nation, everybody here, except the Indians and the Negroes and those others who had been forcibly transported, was here because he or a recent ancestor, a father, a grandfather, or great-grandfather, had chosen this place. The sense of community was inevitably more vivid and more personal because, for so many in the community, living here had been an act of choice. In America, community came first. The voluntary collaborative activities of members of the community were there first, and it was government that came into the interstices, my father writes. Seldom have people been more anxious than Americans have been to share their common purposes. We are desperately earnest to make our community include as much as possible of our daily life. We seldom require people to subscribe to explicit beliefs, but we still expect people to act and feel as if they believed the same thing. Before he was Librarian of Congress, Daniel headed to what is now called the Smithsonian Museum of American History. He laid the groundwork for its bicentennial exhibit, A Nation of Nations. In a nation with a tradition of charity, he said, of harboring and warming the persecuted, the oppressed, and the misunderstood, our stock of charity seems to have become large enough for everyone except our nation itself. We have become obsessed by the limits of our achievement and have almost forgotten its extent. Here we can demonstrate and celebrate what all Americans have accomplished. what we have accomplished individually, but especially what we have accomplished together. The mood is first person plural. Here we can see what we have done. Here, all earlier Americans become ancestors of us all. Daniel's grandfather was a kosher butcher in Gdansk, Poland. Pulverized by pogroms, he left his pregnant wife and arrived here penniless in Newport News, Virginia. For 3 years, he was a peddler in the South, going house to house to raise the money to bring over his family. He saw his son, Daniel's father, for the first time in a small town in Georgia. Daniel believed that all Americans were his ancestors. Let us all think like Dan. Okay, our next article is Disclosure Day resonates amid low institutional trust. Steven Spielberg's spectacular career arc includes popcorn films like Jaws and Jurassic Park, as well as more sober, serious cinema like Lincoln and Saving Private Ryan. But while the movies vary, there's one theme he keeps returning to: the possibility or probability, as Spielberg seems to see it, of extraterrestrial life. He's back at it in a big way on the big screen with Disclosure Day, nearly half a century after exploring extraterrestrials in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and 44 years after E.T. The basic plot, as director told CBS Sunday Morning, no Spielberg spoilers from me, is about how if somebody had the power and if somebody had the possession of the entire archive of visual evidence of what's been happening for the last 80 years, what would happen if they decided to do a data dump across the entire world all at once? And what would be the behavior of the people who are trying to stop the data dump from happening? That is basically the core of this chase movie. As a chase movie alone, Disclosure Day delivers, with the pursued protagonists who have the extraterrestrial evidence, an excellent Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor, tracked by an antagonist, a menacing Colin Firth, intent on keeping the secrets. But for sci-fi cinema to sink more deeply, it requires a suspension of disbelief. And that's made more likely by the real-world, genuine decline in belief or trust in institutions, a dynamic that drives conspicuous conspiracy theories as well, including ones about the government covering up proof of extraterrestrial life that are central to Spielberg's story. Data confirms the social corrosion. Gallup Tracking Trust recently reported that since 1973, confidence has declined across many institutions, including Congress, newspapers, television news, public schools, banks, the church, or organized religion, and the Supreme Court. And while the decline is global, it's intense in the U.S. Americans stand out internationally for their pessimism about the nation's political system, the Pew Research Center stated in April, adding that despite the U.S. having the highest GDP of any of their surveyed countries, 77% of Americans say the nation's political system needs changes or complete reform. What's driving this disconnect? It's important to recognize that trust is a rational calculation. It's not an act of faith, said Bridget Syme, an associate professor of the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Trust is based on outcomes, and so one thing that's going on is that trust is eroding because at least people's perception of, if not the objective assessment of, government outcomes is eroding. The social erosion shores up Disclosure Day's premise, since it makes it more plausible that officials have hidden the truth about alien encounters, let alone other issues, from the American public. Symes said the public perception of mismanagement of issues like the 2008 financial crisis, immigration policy, COVID immunization issues, January 6th and beyond have exacerbated the trust deficit. It is and misinformation in a feedback loop between polarization and distrust, where polarization leads to gridlock, and then gridlock leads to distrust, and eventually it all just kind of boils over together. Whether this loss of trust in institutions extends to faith itself is less clear, especially since there's a distinction. Faith, says Syme, is something you believe regardless of evidence around you, and trust is something you believe because of evidence around you. Faith is a key theme of Disclosure Day. One of its key characters, played by Eve Hewson, who was once training to be a nun, hides out in her former convent, where she's told by a contemplative nun, Elizabeth Marvel, that proof of alien life wouldn't erode her faith. Spielberg himself told CBS that the movie also takes the position of the church. What does this do for the fundamental beliefs that many of us have? Is God our God only on this planet, or is God a God for every system where there's civilization and intelligent life, and even developing life? Those theological questions are beginning to seem more real than rhetorical for some, including some conservative Christian pastors and podcasters profiled by the New York Times after a recent meeting on the eve of the Trump administration's directive to release more government files related to extraterrestrial life. To some of them, including those who the Times story said didn't see neutral visitors from other planets or dimensions, but demonic entities, there's concern about believers' reactions. That worry is channeled in Disclosure Day, when Firth's character warns the human race cannot accept what we know. But that's not necessarily the case, said the Reverend Christopher Collins, vice president for the mission at the University of St. Thomas. Any new discovery, said Collins, can add to the wonder of creation, and therefore to the wonder of the Creator too. Beyond new discoveries, there are also new inventions, including artificial intelligence, a force so potentially portentous that it's the topic of Pope Leo's first encyclical letter, Magnificat Humanitatis, on safeguarding the human person in a time of artificial intelligence. Leo's treatise on magnificent humanity seems prescient because, in spite of, or perhaps because of, the rise of artificial intelligence and interest in extraterrestrial life, there's a countercurrent of interest in the fundamental nature of humanity, too. Collins thinks it's been unfolding for a while in the digital age, and then social media age, and then with AI coming on top of that, and the rampant loneliness of people, especially young people, it could be suggested, continued Collins, that more destabilized things are politically and economically and socially. There also seems to be an upsurge of people looking for faith or having something more solid to rely on, including perhaps relying and focusing on each other. There may be an increasing fascination with the possibility of extraterrestrial life, said Collins, but it's also very notable that there's a whole lot of interest in terrestrial life, too. Questions like, what are we really doing here? Who am I? These profound questions don't just resonate in the plot of the movie, but in the moving narrative of our own lives, and actually in a case of life imitating art, in Disclosure Day and in our everyday, the humans and humanity seem even more mysterious and indeed magnificent than the aliens. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, under the opinion page, Eisenhower's D-Day leadership shows us what America has lost. On the anniversary of D-Day, I sat down to watch a movie and found myself unexpectedly in tears. But that's what pressure did to me. The new war film was directed and edited by Anthony Maris, written by Maris and David Haig, and starred Andrew Scott as the Scottish meteorologist James Stagg, and Brendan Fraser as the Burden General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The film strips D-Day down to its most improbable human element, not the beaches, not the battleships, not the paratroopers falling through the dark, but a general and meteorological arguing over weather charts. The fate of the largest invasion in human history came down to one man's forecast, another man's willingness to trust it, and the overwhelming weight of a decision that could not be taken back. What emotionally broke me wasn't the drama of the forecast, it was something quieter. It was watching men from different nations, America, Britain, Canada, sitting together in genuine trust, arguing fiercely, listening to each other, and ultimately choosing to be bound through a shared commitment. They didn't agree on everything, they didn't always like each other, but they showed up and they held the line together. And then came Eisenhower's order to the Allied troops on June 6th, and his words delivered knowing many of the men reading them would not survive that day. Eisenhower warned them that the task would not be an easy one, and that the hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere marched with them. There was no bluster in it, no self-promotion, just a commander laying down his own heart alongside the soldiers he was sending into the surf, bound together with allies from across the Atlantic in a cause that belonged to all of them. We don't do that anymore. Something has gone quietly, profoundly wrong with American foreign policy. America has stopped believing being the country that shows up. We have started being the country that sends the bill. Eisenhower shouldered the weight of hundreds of thousands of lives. He wasn't thinking about his legacy. He wasn't thinking about leverage. He was thinking about his responsibility to something larger than himself, to an alliance, to a mission, to the idea that free nations owed each other their best effort. Eisenhower would go on to become president, and that same disposition, sober, outward-looking, genuinely burdened by the cost of leadership, defined how he governed. Compared to the brand of leadership we have now, where the first question in every room seems to be, what's in it for me? The difference isn't just political philosophy, it's character. Eisenhower understood that the office existed to serve something above the man who held it. That understanding feels very far away right now. The post-war order America built rested on a recognition that the world works better when free nations stick together. That architecture is fraying, if not nearly gone. Countries that have staked their entire security on American promise are recalculating. They'd be fools not to. America used to understand that a world of strong allies was a world in which Americans could prosper. We don't seem to understand that anymore, or we comprehend it and no longer care. The retreat isn't solely strategic, it's moral. There's a difference between a superpower that leads through legitimacy, one that other nations follow because they trust its judgment and count on its word, and one that throws its weight around while dismissing the very partners its credibility depends on. The world has noticed. 82 years after D-Day, the question isn't whether we're capable of inspiring that trust again. It's whether we still believe it matters. I'm not sure we do, and that is what brought me to tears. Okay, our next article is if not for China, we would be in worse shape on oil prices. We can thank China that gasoline prices aren't higher than they are. By last month, China had cut imports of oil by 3 million barrels a day, the daily consumption of Italy and France combined. China's economy, meanwhile, hums along. Americans agonize over how the price of oil affects gas at the pump. Were it not for China, a tank of gas would cost considerably more. China is propping up the world economy by importing a lot less oil, reads a Wall Street Journal headline. There are several reasons China has been able to cut oil imports, but one is its move away from gas-powered vehicles into electric vehicles. China has also invested heavily in electric-powered high-speed rail, letting travelers replace oil-guzzling short flights and trips in gas-powered cars with train travel. By 2030, China EVs could displace 2.7 million barrels a day, according to the International Energy Agency. If the war with Iran is truly over, and it may not be, Americans' price of oil should be coming down. That's already started, but economists warn that the decline will be slow. Thus, Donald Trump's long crusade against electrified vehicles and promotion of gas-powered ones is hard to explain other than his personal ties with the oil industry. The U.S. is producing more fossil fuel, but much of it is being exported to other countries willing to pay a lot for it. Get this, if Americans want more of their fuel to stay home, they'll have to pay more for it. Trump hollers that Americans must drill to cushion themselves from the cost of foreign energy. And so what did he do on the first day back in office? He ordered the Energy Department to restart exports of American-produced natural gas. He also supports exporting U.S. oil, branding it as energy dominance. Other than environmentalists, and bless you all, Americans tend not to care what powers their cars. Electricity, gasoline, whale oil, buyers of cars or trucks generally prefer whatever option is cheaper. Happily, the energy source that does the least damage to the planet is now the less expensive one. True, it costs more to make electric vehicles than gas-powered ones. However, and this is a big however, the cost to operate EVs is a lot less, and the more gasoline costs, the better the electric car deal becomes. A Chevy Equinox EV costs about $35,000, while the price for the gas-powered version of the compact SUV is $30,000. But if an Equinox owner in, say, Iowa drives about 11,000 miles a year, the American average over 10 years, they will be spending nearly $10,000 more to power the gas SUV than the electric one. We get it. If you must have a new Chevy Equinox right now and can't spare an extra $5,000, then the gas version may be regarded as a necessary purchase. What happens 10 or 15 years down the road can be worried about later. Electricity prices had also been going up, but nowhere near as much as oil prices. That's because power plants use energy sources other than oil, including hydro, wind, solar, and nuclear, in addition to natural gas. But those who can plan for their economic future should be onto it, and so are the countries that do planning, such as China. The U.S. tried under President Joe Biden to electrify the economy, but Trump has undermined almost all of that progress. What's promoting American consumers' new interest in electric vehicles is the high price of gasoline. If this country had made the kind of advances China has, we wouldn't be caring so much about what happens in the Strait of Hormuz. Or on some things, China knows best. And next, we have ICE is still a threat in Western New York. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, operations continue to be a pervasive reality across the United States, and Western New York is no exception. Despite the profound and devastating impact these actions have on our community, local leadership has recently remained silent. On January 27th, Mark Poloncarz stated that a localized ICE surge similar to what was occurring in Minnesota and Chicago at the time would be counterproductive because there's not that many people here for them to detain even if they wanted to. Poloncarz and other officials have put out a few other statements into mid-February, and then it seemed that the issue went away. However, both federal data and the lived experiences of our residents directly contradicted this assertion. According to ICE's own published statistics, the Buffalo area has seen 6,696 detainments since 2021. Furthermore, first-hand accounts of raids and apprehensions are common knowledge among local community members. It seems that official rhetoric is dismissive of an issue that directly impacts thousands of Western New York residents. This erodes public trust. Why is this issue not at the forefront of local officials' agendas? ICE has not gone away, and neither should the concern from officials like Poloncarz. Our officials owe the community accurate representation and a meaningful acknowledgement of the federal law enforcement footprint in Western New York. Our next short article, America should get back to basics. In my opinion, our country and Americans need a reset in the basics, all of which are outlined in the U.S. Constitution. We are distancing ourselves from some very fine principles and forgetting to value one another as we ourselves wish to be valued. As a country, we know the importance of a budget, but continue to overspend. We know that trust begins with truth, and yet persistent in telling lies. We judge before questioning and searching for the truth. We often overcommit without saying no when we need to. We place our soldiers in harm's way before we even try to understand what exactly our differences are. In this 250th year of our country, is it too much to ask that each of us stand up for freedom, truth, and love in everything we do? Let us strive to be a beacon of hope, a haven, and a light for freedom, built on a strong foundation of love. There is no better time than now to stand up in unison for this land that has given us so much, and only ask that we become faithful stewards of its bounty. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, now we'll go on to hints from Heloise. Dear Heloise, I know everyone wants to help by recycling plastic, but it really worries me that there are numerous people who suggest to save and return newspaper bags for the delivery person to reuse. I have no desire to get my newspaper inside a used bag that a neighbor may have returned to the carrier. It may have been touched by someone who's sick. I know the carrier touches the bags, but the bag having been recycled before it gets delivered to my door isn't an option for me. What would my newspaper think about this practice? If they're okay with it, then they should advertise that their paper is being delivered in used bags. Dear Deanna, if the COVID-19 pandemic taught us anything, it's to wash your hands before touching nearly anything, especially after touching items that others might have touched. The pandemic may be over, but the germs we encountered are still here. Recycling plastic is an important part of our lives now and in the future. Any plastic that can be recycled should be. Next question. The small print. Dear Heloise, at the age of 85, I too have trouble reading labels. So I keep a flashlight on my counter, I shine it on a label, and it helps a lot. Marcy B. Marcy, I keep a magnifying glass in my kitchen to read all the tiny print on the labels. It's really making my life a lot easier, especially when I realized that the yogurt I was buying had 8 grams of fat instead of 3 grams. Next question. Listen and don't judge. Dear Heloise, I've never responded to a letter before, but I have to comment on the one from Julie in San Antonio. This is a perfect example of what's wrong with our country these days. Everyone has their nose in everyone else's business. Who cares how someone eats their salad? She can take it out of the plastic container if she wants to. It's nobody's business how other people eat their lunch. Just live your life the way you want and let everyone else do what they want as well. Trish M. Trish, I'm glad to see someone speak up about this. There are so many different customs and personal preferences where dining is concerned. Ask yourself, who does it harm? If it harms no one, then you should go and find something useful to do. And our final question, doctor's portals. Dear Heloise, here's how I keep track of my doctor's portals. I use the notes feature on my iPhone to record each doctor's name, address, and phone number, as well as my username and password to access their portal. I also make a separate note in my phone with all my prescriptions. This way I always have the information with me and I'm ready to fill out forms at the office before an appointment. Okay, now we're going on to Buffalo next in part of the Buffalo News. Wages grow, easing sting of stagnant job market. A fatter paycheck sure can take the sting out of a sluggish job market. That's especially the case in the Buffalo-Niagara region, where hiring has been slow, but wage growth has been strong in a market where unemployment continues to hover around 4%. During the fourth quarter of last year, the average weekly wage in Erie County jumped by 7.3% to $1,424, according to new data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. That was the 11th biggest increase among the 372 biggest counties in the country, and well above the 4.2% increase across the country. In the Buffalo-Niagara metro area, the average weekly wage, which reflects both hourly pay rates and the number of hours worked, grew by 7.1% to $1,394. Those rising wages mean that the total wages earned by the region's workers during the fourth quarter were 7% higher than a year earlier. That's important because those wages fuel consumer spending, which accounts for roughly 70% of all economic activity. It also helps offset the drag on the local economy caused by the region's stagnant job market, which had about 1,000 fewer people employed during the fourth quarter of last year than the end of 2024. That means the region has fewer workers earning paychecks, but those paychecks are significantly bigger, which helps offset the lack of job growth here. Construction workers were among the biggest beneficiaries, with a 17% jump in their average weekly wages. The strong wage growth is a trend that has been in place for most of the post-pandemic period and has been a bright spot for the region's economy at a time when it still hasn't recovered all of the jobs lost during the pandemic lockdown. The nation, on the other hand, has fully recovered and added about 5% more jobs during the same period. Okay, our next article is titled, Old Church is Ideal Venue for Teaching Craftsmanship. For Dennis Mayer, there's no better classroom to learn the lost arts of construction and preservation than inside a 150-year-old former church. Whether it's the historic Medina sandstone and limestone in the original walls, or the wood trusses, brick, and faded blue plaster that followed, and from the inlay flooring to colorful stained glass windows, it's all there to be studied, repaired, replicated, and improved upon. That's made Mayor Assembly House the perfect medium to not only teach high school, college, and adult students the tools and the trades, but to pass on the skills, traditional craftsmanship, and love of design that built much of Buffalo. Standing in the cavernous former church sanctuary, he proudly gestures to various rooms set up around the open space as he points out the unique craftsmanship produced by his students. All it takes, he says, is creativity, passion, and a willingness to try. I call it the dream world for the building arts, said Mayer, the founder and executive director of Assembly House. That quality is really important to excite people and to spark their joy in their imagination. Located in the former Immaculate Conception Catholic Church at 150 Edward Street, Assembly House is a community construction workshop, art space, and demonstration site that uses the structure of the church as the raw material for new projects and a model for experimentation. Through its Model City Builders program for high school students, its 8-week training program for college-aged adults, and its apprenticeship initiative to train people for construction careers, Assembly House seeks to generate renewed interest in architecture and building while creating a new cadre of skilled professionals. We've been working on the building to transform it into a destination that is both a cultural site around the building arts and a destination for those in the community and beyond, Mayor said. As we've been transforming the building, we've been running the programs to teach skills of building and design to people who work with us. A dozen years after Mayor bought the dilapidated church and launched Assembly House, he is hoping to expand its visibility, not only locally but nationally, by growing educational opportunities, adding more public tours, and even displaying some of the students' work at galleries and online for sale. In doing so, he's also seeking new revenue streams to sustain the $1.2 million nonprofit, which relies primarily on philanthropy. The challenge is always keep it going, Mayor said. We're looking for supporters to help make this a more lasting experience here. Students and workers are now building high-quality artisanal objects for sale, such as 5-sided wooden display boxes to mount old tools, gadgets, or other items that are donated. Commission projects are next, and Assembly House is open for tours 2 days a month on the second Friday and Saturday, while Mayor and his team host other tours by appointment. Regular 1-hour tours are $50 a person, while premium tours are higher. That's where we want to go to build revenue, he said. This provides the opportunity to elevate the site, and we're thankful that it's becoming known as a model. His efforts are paying off. 5 years ago, Assembly House won the 2021 Great Places Award from the Environmental Design Research Association and Project for Public Spaces, and it just received the Pillar of New York Award from the Preservation League of New York State, which learned about the nonprofit through a tour last fall that hosted visitors from New York City and Toronto. We're teaching pragmatic skills, Mayor said. We're getting people excited about building, about touching materials and tools at the same time that we're building out these wonder rooms inside the church to excite people, to capture the public imagination and to create a unique educational and cultural site for the city of Buffalo. Today, the interior features several sculptural elements and cabinet rooms with displays focused on different forms of art, design, and architecture, as well as the main tool and workshop where the altar used to be. That's where an 1890s oak mantelpiece is now being replicated by apprentices using maple. All of these are skills that we are really wanted to preserve. They are lost arts, Mayor said. One of the cabinet rooms sits on a rolling platform with shelves, a desk, and a staircase leading up to a second level, where doll houses are on display with interior side views exposed. There must be an aspect of play and whimsy to this. At the same time that we're building with a seriousness, a purpose, and pragmatic skills, there needs to be an element of the fantastic, of the dreamy, in order to bring more people in and get them excited. And next, under tourism, we have animal rights groups concerned about fate of marineland whales. It appeared to be a happy ending earlier this month for a group of 30 belugas and 4 dolphins that had entertained crowds at Marineland in Niagara Falls, Ontario, before its closure in 2024. Marineland had threatened to euthanize the animals, saying it could not afford their care after a request was denied to transfer the animals to an attraction in China. But Canada approved of a plan to rescue, split up, and rehome all 30 belugas across 5 aquariums accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, including 2 different SeaWorld locations, an aquarium in Spain. In addition to some belugas, Oceanographic Valencia in Spain will take Marineland's 4 dolphins. But animal advocates are unhappy that the plan was endorsed and transfer permits were issued without medical evaluations of the animals, which would determine whether the animals are healthy enough for the lengthy journey from deteriorating tanks in Niagara Falls to their new homes. Long-distance transport is incredibly dangerous for belugas, said Caitlin Mitchell, lawyer and director of legal advocacy at Animal Justice. Independent experts must evaluate these animals before any transfer takes place to ensure they are not being moved with pre-existing health conditions, something that occurred when Marineland previously transferred whales to Mystic Aquarium in Connecticut, she said. 3 out of 5 of those belugas died. The group continues to push for as many of the animals as possible to be transferred to seaside sanctuaries, like the Whale Sanctuary Project in Nova Scotia. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And still under tourism, we have East Aurora is a favorite small town. The rest of the country is catching on to something the Hallmark Channel has been hip to for years. East Aurora has major small town charm. The village of East Aurora, home to about 6,000 residents, has been named a Northeast Regional winner of Parade Magazine's America's Favorite Small Towns competition. The honor also makes it a finalist for the national title of America's Favorite Small Town, which is going to be announced later this month. A second regional winner, Montpelier, Vermont, was chosen to represent the Northeast. Montpelier and East Aurora are among the just 10 regional winners across the country. East Aurora was nominated by Visit Buffalo, Erie County's tourism arm, for the honor. East Aurora deserves this recognition, said Patrick Kaler, Visit Buffalo president and CEO. From the Roycroft campus to the shops on Main Street, East Aurora is filled with history, charm, and community spirit. The win is great tourism advertising for the village, which was featured in a special edition of the magazine last month with a full-color spread. East Aurora was singled out for being the home of the American arts and crafts movement, the artistic rebellion against the industrialization that favored expression through handcraftsmanship, which is still cherished at the Roycroft campus. It got a shout-out for launching both Fisher-Price toys and Millard Fillmore's political career. The story highlighted Vidler's 5 and 10 and the Aurora Theater's neon marquee, as well as its historic but modern hotels and restaurants. East Aurora's win was featured in the May 29th issue of the magazine. Voting took place from November to February, counting more than 150,000 votes cast nationally. For a small town, we have a lot going on. The Roycroft campus, locally owned small businesses and shops. We have tour buses coming in, said Don Vidler, co-owner of Vidler's 5 and 10. East Aurora is really a Norman Rockwell, Currier and Ives place. The Hallmark Channel has recognized the village's charm for the past several years, with film companies choosing it as a backdrop for warm and fuzzy Christmas movies, romances, and family fare. Whoever clinches the final title of America's favorite small town will win a Parade X Stellar activation at its town July 4th activities. That could include a celebrity appearance, sponsored giveaways, and national media coverage. A special edition of the magazine with the finalists will be sold in grocery stores, bookstores, and other retailers. Okay, next under development, state nominates 6 Western New York properties for historic status. 6 Western New York sites were among 19 properties and districts statewide that were nominated by state officials this month for listing on the state and national registers of historic places. The recommendations by the New York State Board for Historic Preservation would make the properties and their owners eligible to benefit from various public preservation programs and services, including matching state grants as well as state and federal historic tax credits to help renovate the properties. More than 131,000 historic properties in New York are currently listed. The newest recommendations in Western New York include the Bennett Apartments in Buffalo, which were created in 1938 by the Buffalo Cement Company and consist of 2 residential blocks connected by an underground garage to accommodate both residents and cars. The complex features machine-age design with Art Deco and Art Modern features. The Dunkirk Macaroni and Supply Company building on Lake Erie waterfront in Dunkirk, which is one of the rare surviving buildings to represent the growing popularity of Italian food at the turn of the 20th century, when there were more than 100 pasta factories scattered statewide by 1925. Constructed in 1908 as a 2-story building on a full stone basement, it was expanded in 1912 with a 3rd and 4th floor and was used until the 1940s. The basement and 1st floor were used for mixing, kneading, rolling, cutting, and shaping, while the upper floors held racks for drying pasta. A Farmers and Mechanics Savings Bank in Lockport, which was designed by the Beaux Arts style by Binghamton architects T.I. Lacey and Son, and built in 1905 and 1906 as the city's tallest structure. The 6-story steel frame building was laid out with 3 distinct zones, including the public banking hall at the lowest, then a private office area, then the attic zone with mechanicals. Gates Manor Apartments in Buffalo, which was designed by architect Morton G. Wolfe and constructed in 1928, featuring small apartments for middle-class professionals and especially independent women. Ferry High School in Wyoming Perry High School in Wyoming County, which dates to 1906 to 1907 and demonstrates the community's transition from rural academy education to a modern public high school. It was used through 1955. The Peters House in Medina in Orleans County, which is a Queen Anne-style home that was built in 1910 outside the village core. And under higher education, bilingual education getting a boost at SUNY Buffalo State. SUNY Buffalo State University will receive $250,000 to establish a bilingual educator pipeline program, Assemblyman John Rivera said. The funds were included in the new state budget. This investment at Buffalo State University will help build a new generation of bilingual educators who understand the languages, cultures, and experiences of multilingual learners, Rivera said. By strengthening this workforce, we are investing directly in the academic success of thousands of students across our region and throughout New York. The initiative will focus on expanding access to teacher certification programs for multilingual and immigrant origin students and community members, while offering the financial, academic, social, emotional, and cultural supports needed to ensure their success, according to Rivera's office. Multilingual learners now comprise about 21% of Buffalo Public Schools' student population, Rivera's office said. And next we have higher ed trailblazers. 2 education officials from the Buffalo-Niagara region made city and state's list of 62 trailblazers in higher education. Matthew Giordano is president of Villa Maria College, and Megan Toohey is director of government relations at the University of Buffalo. Giordano was named Villa Maria's interim president in 2018 and was made the permanent president the following year. City and state noted Villa Maria's enrollment last September was a record high 630 students. City and state said Giordano took a forward-thinking approach with new Villa Maria programs in crime scene investigation and sports management. The school also has a care team to support students from whom faculty suspect are struggling, and Villa Maria has launched a $3 million funding campaign. Toohey has served on her current role at UB for over 8 years. She advocated for an initiative that led to the creation of UB Jacobs School of Medicine in downtown Buffalo and positioned UB to serve as the hub for the state's Empire AI initiative, according to City and State. Okay, in our final article, UB taps into AI's potential. The University of Buffalo recently hosted a conference about AI, spotlighting its impact on higher education and economy. UB School of Management is changing with the times, and said Aneth Heyer, the school's dean. We are actually redoing many of our degrees to explicitly have AI in the title, Heyer said. Every department is creating new courses. They are hiring new faculty who are already prepared to teach AI tools. AI is also a topic of research, he said. For instance, a faculty member is studying using AI to read publicly traded companies' 10 through K statements and how that affects investor participation. Ayer said students are already using AI. It is a matter of finding ways to use it to augment their education. They're creating music and videos and everything else, he said. The question is, can that fun they have there come into the classroom? because the best student to teach it is motivated student, and the student gets demotivated because they don't see the connection. And I think AI allows us to create environments where they can sort of see the possibilities of what is possible, he said. Ayer said he sees the potential to use AI to deliver personalized education to students at scale. If AI helps us do that, then every individual will get to figure out a way of what makes them tick, Ayer said. And maybe that will get them get better jobs, get higher productivity, get more computer science research, and better outcomes. And you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 21st, 2026 issue of the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News. We read from the Viewpoints section of the Buffalo News every Sunday at 6 p.m. Your reader has been Karen. Thank you very much for listening, and take good care of yourself and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the National Enquirer. At 8 p.m., we have People Magazine. And at 9 o'clock, we have the New York Times Book Review. Stay tuned for these readings and more. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, please stay with us. If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability